So how exactly can you retire without having millions of dollars and on top of that, without making a ton of money? Now, in reality, here's what I will say. When it comes to thinking about the idea of retirement, to say, for example, I want to be able to just golf all day, do what I want all day. To me, that's not what retirement means. It means having the option of not working if you don't want to. But for me personally, I always want to do something. I always want to work my job, but I want to work a job that I actually enjoy. To me, that's retirement. Working because I want to, not because I have to. And there's this other factor with retirement, and it's basically that the retirement factor will humble just about anyone. And what I mean is this: when you try to calculate exactly how much money it will take for you to actually retire, it will humble you, like, drastically. I remember I was about 19 years old, and of course, like any young adult, I had all these ambitions, and I said, I want to have this Cayenne Porsche. I want to live in this massive fancy house. I want to have this and that and this and that. And when I ran the numbers, I was like, I'm gonna need over almost like $10 million to retire, I think it was, okay? The answer was, that humbled me. And I said, well, it's gonna take you like around 60 years or 50 years to actually get to that point. I was like, this is crazy. Like, it's so much time, so much effort, so much money just so I can pay for those wants, for those toys. The answer was, this is way too much money. And to me, that changed my concept. And that's why I say, when you think about retirement the right way, when you actually run the numbers, it will humble you. And when it comes to retirement, most people don't know this, but you actually have 3 different layers. Most people try to focus on the last layer, and that's why they wait so long to retire. But if you focus on the first layer, you're able to retire so much faster and build on to the next and next layer. So let me break this down, okay? I call this SLS. And the first thing is, when it comes to retirement, you have the survival retirement part, then you have the living retirement part, and then you have the thriving retirement part, okay? So that's survive, live, and thrive. Sounds cool, sounds similar, but they're vastly different in the sense that survive means you can cover your core expenses. For example, like shelter, utilities, groceries, and transportation. If you can cover that from passive income, it means you don't have to work because you can live, but you're not really living a fancy life per se. You don't really have that much comfort in a sense. And that's why the second layer is the actual living part, where you're actually able to have some more comfort. You know, have the mattress you want, have the furniture you want, maybe have some things here that you actually enjoy. That's the living part. And then you go into, for example, the thriving part. It's to say, I have all my core basics taken care of, I have the comforts taken care of, but then now I want to thrive. I want to go on vacation. I want to have a fancy car. I want to do this. I want to do that. That is the thriving part. And when you think about this, everyone wants that thrive, right? But it takes vastly different amounts of patience and money and time to actually acquire it. And that's why I say first, you want to focus on the survive, then live, then thrive, but you don't wait until you can thrive, because by that point, you're like 50 or 60 and you never enjoyed the ride. And that's not what I want for you guys. And that's why when I ran the numbers and I saw Tommy, you'll be 50 until you can get to that point, I said, no, I'm gonna basically just want less stuff and be able to get there a lot sooner. And that's why today I'm 25 years old per se, and I'm able to say, hey, I basically handle the live part. If I wanted to, I can basically do, for example, not really the live part. I handle the survive part. My core expenses taken care of from passive income. But if I wanted to, I could also handle the live part, but I'm not there just yet, so I can't say I've dominated completely. But yeah, that's my next one, to dominate fully the live and then dominate fully the thrive. And to me, that's going to be awesome. I'll tell you more about my numbers later on in this video, how much money each of them actually take. Now, the very first thing, guys, is, as always, like this video, on top of also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, here's the first thing I want to talk about, okay? You first want to establish exactly how much money you're going to need for retirement. On top of that, you know, what are your core expenses and how much do you actually need in passive income to actually take care of those, okay? And whenever I ask someone, like, hey, how much money do you want to retire with? Like, how much money do you want per month? They always say some crazy number like, oh, I want 10,000 bucks per month. And then I say, well, that's going to require millions of dollars. And they're like, well, maybe I don't want that much money because it's unrealistic. You know, it's not like it's not realistic because you can achieve it, but it's like, do you really want to work like 30, 40 years to get to that point when you can just basically do it in half the time and work towards that later on also? That's my point. Like, I just don't really see the point of like doing all that stuff, okay? Now, here's what I mean. When most people say, Tommy, I need around $40,000, $80,000 a year to be able to retire and live comfortably, it's usually because you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to have debt payments. I'm going to have, for example, not enough investments potentially. And I'm also going to have, for example, my home payment, okay? My mortgage, that's going to be expensive. So I need to have a lot of money to cover these expenses. But the core thing when it comes to retirement is if you can figure out a way to lower your core expenses, the answer is you can get there so much faster. For example, my real numbers are these, okay? So at a certain point, I had debt. So that was around like $350 per month or so. On top of that, I had to worry about, for example, my rent payments. At the time, it was like around $750. My grocery bills, my utilities, my car, right? I have a paid off car, so I don't have to worry about like car payments or so. But imagine someone that has a mortgage, that have car payments, that has debt payments, that has all these obligations. The answer is you're going to require so much more money. So if you focus on, for example, if I have no debt, that means I need less money. If I have a fully funded emergency account, that means I have stability. If I have some investments, that's great because that gives me passive income. But most importantly, if I have a paid off home, the most expensive part of my budget is basically nil. I have to pay, for example, insurance and taxes and so on, maintenance, but that's about it. The mortgage itself is covered, it's fully paid off. That means that saves you a ton of money. That means your cost of living goes down drastically. And that's why when I say like, hey, I can live on $12,000 a year, people freak out. But if you have no rent to pay, no mortgage basically, you have no debt, what are your expenses? Like gas and what? Like food and what else? Like utilities? Like that's not that much money relative to having, for example, all those other big expenses. And that's why I'm able to say, hey, you can actually get there a lot faster. But your main focus has to be on, for example, how do I lower my core expenses? So here's another thing, guys, okay? Now, you want to do this really quick. Do I have a phone around me? Yeah, my phone's right here. Let me just grab this here because I want to show you guys step by step what you actually want to do. So the first step is you want to calculate exactly what your annual cost of living is actually going to be as far as, for example, your survive budget, okay? So that means, what are your core expenses? Shelter, utilities, groceries, and transportation. What does that look like? And try to figure out a way to actually pay those things off first before you start investing in everything else, okay? So let's say, for example, I tell you guys, hey guys, I'm spending, for example, $2,000 a month, multiply that by 12, that's around $24,000. Now, listen here clearly because this is actually super, super important. Both have their drawbacks, both have benefits. It all depends on you, okay? Now, the first thing is, once you're debt free, once you have a fully funded emergency account, once you're investing like 10, 20% into the stock market, and once you have a paid off home, life changes. It becomes a lot less stressful, it becomes a lot less friction, okay? Now, here's the thing. If you want to make $24,000 from the stock market, we use something called, for example, the 4% rule. Tommy, what's the 4% rule? What does it mean? It means, let's say the stock market increases by 8% a year or 12% a year. You don't want to take out that much money because clearly you're going to run out because you're eating up the actual money you're making. You don't want to do that, right? Because the market might go down. So by making a rule of just taking out, for example, 4%, it limits the amount of money you actually take out. It allows the money in the stock market to actually keep growing, which means you'll have more money. So the point is this. You want to multiply your annual cost by 25. And that will give you the amount of money you need to have in the stock market to equal 4%, to equal, for example, that $24,000. So if I have $600,000 and I take out 4%, that's going to equal $24,000. Again, just multiply your annual expense by 25. It gives you the number. In this case, multiply by 0.04 gives me the same 24,000. It's just a simple way not to have to divide by 0.04 because some people just don't like mathematics, so I try to make it easier for them, okay? But that's one factor. That's with the stock market. So it's like, for example, you want to keep investing until you get to this goal in the stock market, but then you also want to keep investing even more money. That way you have even a larger cushion. Now, some folks will say, Tommy, I don't want to do the stock market. My thing is, as far as the long-term team here, I preach let's not go into debt anymore, right? So the idea is if you're wanting to do real estate, for example, as a retirement plan to make the income from the tenants and all this stuff, the answer is if you're going to do it without debt, is going to take a lot longer. And the point is that money in the meantime is going to be eaten up by inflation and so on. So that's why I say invest first, right? 10, 20%. Once you pay off the home, keep investing that 15, 20% in the stock market. But then all the extra income, you're able to save it up and actually buy properties in cash because it won't take you that long because now you're not putting money aside for a mortgage anymore, which saves you a ton of money, right? So if you think about it, a good return to get basically as far as rental property would be around 8%, and you're able to take that full amount, right? So if you buy a property, you want to have some money on the side, for example, for maintenance and repairs or whatever, like a little fund, like a little emergency fund for the whole thing. But you're able to say, again, if I want to have $24,000, just multiply this by 12.5, which is half of 25 because we're using 8%, right? The answer is you're looking at $300,000. So if you're able to make 8% on your investment and you want to make $24,000 basically per year, if you take basically 8% of $300,000 is going to give you that $24,000. That means if you have $300,000 worth of real estate that's paying you 8%, you're actually able to get there faster. You might say, Tommy, well, this is actually half of the stock market. So should I do this instead? The answer is no, you should do both. And here's why. Because stock market you can do today, they'll grow today, but real estate, you're going to have to save up a lot of money, right? And it takes time to actually do it if you're going to do it debt free. And that's why I recommend do the stock market first, pay down your home completely, and then use that income to potentially buy a rental property.
To respond to that.
Okay, never asked you about that, Siri. But that's the core idea, and that's how you would go about doing it. So real estate is good. Stocks are great. Right now, I'm able to cover my core expenses from the stock market because I don't have any real estate as far as rental property, but I do have like my actual home that's paid off. But that's my home, and it does not produce for me any income. It can produce, for example, like, increases in value every year, whatever. But as far as actual income, I'm not getting it. And that's when I said before, for example, guys, if I wanted to, I could sell that home, grab that money, right? And then basically buy some rental properties, maybe like 2 or 3, and then say, hey, now I'm able to cover my live expenses and then work on, for example, my thrive expenses. But I don't want to rent. I don't want to get into another mortgage. So to me, it makes no sense right now. So I just want to have that money there to buy a property for personal use, or for example, just to have there while I live there, if you know what I mean. Okay, so rental property is different. Now, after that, after you're done, for example, with the survive budget, then you work, for example, with the live budget. The live budget is just a few levels above, for example, the survive budget. You're just adding, for example, a few comforts, maybe faster Wi-Fi, maybe you're going out to dinner every now and then, but you're not going on crazy vacations, crazy exclusions. It's not none of that, okay? So you got to keep in mind, for example, your live budget, don't make it too crazy high. You just want to have the comforts in life. For me, my live budget might just be like, oh, I can go out more often. Maybe I can go do this and that by saving up money. That's basically it, but it's not you going crazy and losing your mind. Your thrive budget is you going a little crazy. It's you being able to say, I can buy clothes whenever I want to. I can go on vacation whenever I want to. And when I say whenever I want to, I don't mean, for example, go on vacation every month. But it's to say, like, I can do it. You know what I mean? So for me personally, here are my personal numbers. My live budget is $1,000 per month. If I'm actually, well, not my live budget, my survive budget is a little bit under $1,000 per month actually. And with that money, I'm going to cover all my core expenses. My live budget is $2,000 per month. And I can basically have like a lot of the things that I basically just want. And then my thrive budget is about $4,000 per month. And to me, that's more than enough money that I actually need. And the thing is, guys, okay, if you consider retirement as an inactive activity of just receiving money and not working, it's a lot harder. But because I have, for example, my live budget, not my live budget, my survive budget taken care of, I can say, well, that's good, but I still make money from my job, which I enjoy and I love my business, right? So I'm able to kind of like have like a live lifestyle or even like a thrive lifestyle, right? Without actually having the money because I have income that comes in, right? So it's about how do I get there while I'm actually enjoying the journey at the same time. Now, here's the honest truth that I also do want to mention here. This plan, it sounds great, right? Everything sounds great on paper. And it also sounds very simple because that's my job, to make things sound very simple. It's basically, what is your core budget? How much money do you need annually? Divide that by this and do this, and that's the number. You invest, okay? What do I invest in personally? I invest into the S&P 500 That's it, nothing else. That's it. When I buy rental property, I want to buy properties that are basically below its actual appraisal, not really, yeah, it's actual appraisal value, that way I can get a discount and basically pay cash and basically get the benefits of having built-in equity in the property, okay? That's awesome stuff, okay? Simple stuff, not complicated whatsoever. Finance is usually not complicated. But the idea is, when you think about it, it's gonna take you years potentially to get debt free. It took me about it took me a long time, like 6 years almost, to actually pay off my debt. It took me months to build up an emergency fund. It took me years to build up, for example, enough money in the stock market to cover my survive expenses. It took me years to save up money to buy my first property and pay cash for it. These things take time. The average person is going to take them 10 to 15 years. But the way I see it, I'd rather take 15 years than my previous plan that was about like 30, 45 years, okay? I remember thinking like, oh, you know what? I'm going to be a millionaire when I turn like in my 50s. It was insane. It was ridiculous, okay? It just makes no sense. So the point is, I will say this. The man with the least desires is bound to get there a lot faster. You know, if you think, for example, you need more money to fulfill all your desires, consider having less desires. That way you need less money. And again, you have to do less effort. That's the idea, guys, okay? So overall, guys, again, it's pretty basic. It's pretty simple. I'm going to tell you some of my goals here. I want to have 300K in stocks, which I have to cover my survive expenses, which are great. I also want to have, for example, some real estate properties. So that's my second phase, because stock market is great. I don't want to be too reliant on it though. So I want to have some rental property that makes me at least $1,000 per month. Also, that's like 3 properties potentially for me personally. 3-4 properties, boom, that's taken care of. Now I have stocks and a rental property. One goes down, probably the other one won't go down, because rental income is different from, for example, the stock market might go down, whatever. But that's the idea, right? And then I can basically build up even more on both sides to bring it up to my thrive. But once I hit, for example, like, oh, I have $4,000 getting like coming in per month, that's great stuff, right? But once I hit that, it's like cool stuff, but I'm still going to be working. Maybe I travel a little bit more or whatever, but it's still the same exact thing. It's not that crazy. And that's what I love about my budget. You know, I don't have the Cayenne Porch idea right now at the moment. I don't have, for example, like the fancy mansion at the moment in the picture. But I do have all these things that allow me to be free today than to be actually working towards all these things that in the end, they're going to stay behind. All right, guys, that's basically it. Thanks for watching. Comment down below, made it. So I know you made it all the way to the video. And before you leave this video, do me a favor, okay? This is super important. Comment down below exactly what is your survival number? How much money can you survive on? What is your live number? And also, what is your thrive number? Comment that down below, SLS, okay? This way you have correct numbers, okay? This way you actually know how much you actually need. It makes no sense to shoot for a goal without knowing what the finish line is, because it'll never end. As always, guys, peace out. Long-term team out. Up here is another video, or raise my face. Click and subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out.